As you know, am inclined to ask why about things, and I can't help but wonder why, after the Trump administration top election security official and Georgia's own election officials vouched for the integrity of the last elections, did seemingly every Republican controlled legislative body in the country pivot, as if on command, to file and move voter suppression bills. 361 of them by one count. When you see group behavior, it's often interesting to look for the motivation. Well, you have the big lie that the election was stolen, which allows for skepticism to be brought against elections, even if it's not founded in fact. And at the same time, you have unpopular policies demanded by a Republican donor elite that has every interest in building an electorate that will give the donor elite its policies rather than giving up on their policies in order to attract voters. As our friend Reverend Warnock says, limiting voters serves this, particularly when limiting voters is to make sure that some people aren't voting. And of course, dark money is that donor elite's weapon of choice. And we see the conservative dark money groups have already announced $39 million in spending campaigns to restrict voting rights at the state level and block passage of the For the People Act. And that number is likely going up because these very same groups spent over $100 million in dark money during just the 2018 election cycle. At the state level, we see two particular groups very prominent. One, the State Policy Network, and two, the American Legislative Exchange Council, the so-called ALEC. ALEC is toxic enough that Exxon severed its ties to ALEC. When ExxonMobil thinks it needs to clean up its act by severing from you, that's a pretty strong signal. So ALEC has singled out Representative Jones for praise, calling her an ALEC legislator. ALEC is funded by Koch Industries. It has received millions of dollars from right-wing foundations like the Charles G. Koch Charitable Foundation, the Searle Freedom Trust, the Bradley Foundation, and also through the Identity Laundering Donors Trust and Donors Capital Fund. It's working now with the Heritage Foundation on a $24 million campaign to produce model voting legislation for state legislatures like Georgia's to adopt, and even to hire lobbyists in what they call crucial states. ALEC has created a secret working group on election-related matters led by Cleta Mitchell, who many people will remember for her role backing Trump's efforts to flip Georgia's election results. So ALEC has its hands all over this. There's also the Georgia Public Policy Center, which is the local affiliate of the State Policy Network. Representative Jones has said, I want to publicly say how much I appreciate Georgia Public Policy Foundation. We rely on Georgia Public Policy Foundation's research and work. They've been an invaluable resource to us. Well, guess what? ALEC is an official associate organization of the State Policy Network with the Georgia Public Policy Center. And the overgroup, the SPN, State Policy Network, has paid for dozens of its think tanks to become ALEC members. So there's a lot of back and forth between the dark money ALEC group and the dark money State Policy Network. Like ALEC, State Policy Network is largely funded by big corporations and right-wing family foundations, including the Koch brothers, the Waltons, the Bradley Foundation, the Roe Foundation, the Coors family, and of course, the ubiquitous identity launderers, Donors Trust, and Donors Capital Fund. There are lots of other familiar names moving into this space. The Heritage Foundation, the Koch-funded dark money group's political arm, Heritage Action for America, announced plans to spend $24 million on a 2-year effort to shape states' voting laws and to work at the federal level to block the For the People Act. In March, Heritage Action boasted that Heritage Action recently launched an effort to strengthen Georgia's election laws and restore voter confidence in the state, including a $600,000 TV ad buy, digital advertising, and a grassroots advocacy initiative for an initial total investment of $1 million. And that's a quote from them. At the same time, we have the so-called Honest Elections Project, which is Leonard Leo's new outgrowth of his vast dark money network that has pledged tens of millions of dollars into conservative election efforts. Honest Elections Project is an alias group that can use all of the anonymous funds given to its pre-existing judicial education project, which Leo used to steer Bradley Foundation grants into coordinated amicus brief efforts that I've chronicled elsewhere. His Honest Elections Project for Georgia released a string of press releases urging Georgia to investigate its 2020 results and to take up voter suppression legislation, and congratulated the state for enacting SB 202 last month. Last is True the Vote, a group whose main aim has been to recruit poll watchers, whose task of finding suspicious activity is often focused on voters in neighborhoods of color. Like the other groups, its finances are largely opaque, coming through anonymized donations via a donors trust, as well as the Bradley Foundation and, of course, the State Policy Network. So there is this complex interlocking network of billionaire right-wing dark money that I think tends to signal why the whole herd would have moved at once based on no actual evidence of fraud or dishonesty in the elections.
Thank you, Senator.
Has my time expired?
I'm afraid it is.
My apologies. My clock doesn't run when I'm remote, and I will yield my non-existent remaining time.